Welcome to Off the Green. We are your hosts. I'm Wade McFarlane. He is Anthony Bruno.
Have you ever thought about quitting your day job to play golf every single day? Well, our next guest did exactly that.
Almost a year ago, Jeremy Wilson left his job and traveled across the U.S., hitting up every state in an RV. He played over 100 rounds of golf, but the reason for doing it, 269 random pairings.
Jeremy tells amazing stories about a lot of the people he's been paired up with across the country and how they have given him a new perspective on golf and on life. So we hope you enjoy our conversation with Jeremy Wilson.
Jeremy, thanks so much for coming on, man. It's great to have you. We're super excited to talk to you. Joining us from Nashville, finally back home after being on the road for months and months and months. Going to start things off with the icebreaker question because this is how we start off every show. So our icebreaker for today, and Anthony doesn't know this one either, so Bruno is totally in the dark to this one too. But earlier this week, Bruno did a trio. So he had to pick a burger chain, a fries / kind of side dish chain, and then a dessert chain to come up with the GOAT of all takeout, right? So controversially, probably Bruno picked a Whopper. He picked a poutine, so he upgraded those fries, and then he picked a Dairy Queen, which is up here in Canada, like a Dairy Queen ice cream. So if you had to make your selections, what would they be?
Man, I am partial to Five Guys, but I can't decide if I want to give them the burger or the fries. But I think I'll give Five Guys I'll give Five Guys the burger, and then I'm picking fries next.
Yeah, next up is
next.
fries.
Oh gosh,
It's tough.
That is tough. So when we were on the West Coast on this trip, which I'm sure we'll get into, I got into this In-N-Out kick when I was out there, and I had it so many times that I told my girlfriend, like, I cannot eat this again, or else my body's gonna explode. Like, we can't keep doing this. So I'll give them the fries because I would always get two orders because they're small, so like you feel like you can just it's almost like air. And then see, dessert's tough. I'm a man of many food allergies, but before I had all those food allergies, I would take a milkshake from Steak and Shake, if you guys know that by chance.
Ooh, okay. No, don't think we have that one up here. But speaking of In-N-Out, like In-N-Out would be my selection for dessert. Like their shakes at In-N-Out, I don't care what flavor either. Like give me any flavor of In-N-Out shake. They are absolutely incredible. And yeah, I mean, the burger, Bruno, we'll let you explain your take.
Yeah, people were so appalled that I picked the Whopper from Burger King. And my response to that is that the Whopper is the Joe Buck of hamburgers. Everyone just hates on it for no reason at all, even though it's a really good burger. So I stand by my take. I love Burger King and I will eat a Whopper. Okay, I shouldn't say every day of the week, but I'll eat a Whopper once a week. How about that?
I think Bruno's getting sucked in by the new Burger King ads. That's the issue here.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
The jingles in your head just going Whopper, 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 Whopper.
Oh man. All right. Time to start talking about golf now, guys. So I love all the fast food takes, but Jeremy, this is obviously why we have you on the show. So just to start things out here, when did you first get introduced to the game of golf and what is your first memory playing?
Well, I come from a golfing family, really. So my dad plays, my older brother played. I'm the youngest of three kids. My sister does not play. She's in the middle. But my grandparents played, and even like my grandparents on both sides were like obsessed with it. And so I was with the family that you grow up with a club in your hand. It wasn't introduced to me at some kind of later age. And even as I taught golf later on in life, out of college, I've had like mad respect for people who pick it up later on because it's so much harder if it's when it's not learned at a young age. So as far as like early golfing memories, I remember my grandfather, my dad's dad, taking me out to the range and just giving me lessons. And he was a really good golfer, but definitely did things his own way. Like I remember getting older and being like, oh, no one else does that but him. Like no one else stands this way when they chip, or no one else does this. But I remember hitting the flag one time on the range, and I thought it was like the pinnacle of all golfing achievements when I was a little kid. And he would come over and give me like chipping lessons in the backyard, and so I just grew up around it for the most part. but didn't really play competitively much. I played in some junior tournaments in Florida. That's where I grew up, in Central Florida. And but after that, never really did much competitive golf. So it's always just kind of been fun recreational stuff.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how it starts for a lot of people, right? It's like the family gets you into it. You're out there with your grandparents, you're out there with your parents, you're out there with your siblings, and kind of just working through things. And every family, I think, has that too, right? Where it's like, no one else does this, but we do this in our family, or my, dad does this, my grandfather does this. One of the things I do, and I know you're the same way, Jeremy, so I wanted to talk to you a bit about this, is the three wood. Like, everyone who knows Henrik Stenson, he's ripping 3-wood off of every tee because it's pure and he can rely on it. I'm the same way. I can't trust my driver, so I'm a 3-wood guy off every tee deck. You're the same. Explain to me why.
And yeah, well, the 3-wood I have that I hit a lot is kind of old, and so is my driver. They're both from like 2013. They're like those old Titleist 913s.
Okay.
If you remember those. And so it's, when I look at it now, it looks so small to me compared to like the modern 3-woods, because the modern 3-woods look like drivers sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll be watching like a pro tournament on TV and be like, is that 3-wood? Is that driver? What is that? So yes, I don't know. It's like my favorite club in my bag. I've loved it for so long. And there was a time, I mean, a few years ago, there was a time where I just completely aborted driver, and I was like, what? I don't need 20 more yards or 30 or whatever. I was like, I'm just gonna hit 3-wood. I know where it's going. I can control it. I like playing from the fairway. I'm tired of looking for balls, and there's not much else to gain.
Are you
for me.
Are you hitting it off the fairway as well? Because that's kind of my specialty too. Is let me hit 3-wood off the fairway from anywhere.
Yes, I love doing that. So I'll still do that, and I have such a big gap in my bag right now from 3-wood to 3-iron that I need to fill. And so what that's done though is that's just made me learn how to hit 3-wood from, like this 50-yard range, right? Where it's like, okay, this is like a half 3-wood, when that really should just be like a driving iron or 5-wood or something like that. And so I do, yeah, that is definitely like a favorite club, and doesn't feel like a risky play, when I do it. Where driver off the deck is like a who knows what's going to happen situation.
Yeah, no, I feel you guys with the 3-wood. Like the last couple of years, I don't know what's happened to my driver. Wade can attest to this. It's just been a disaster. So I hit my 3-wood as often as I possibly can. Jeremy, I want to ask you obviously about writing. Before we get into to pair it up, who is your favorite author, and what is the best thing you have read recently?
Oh man, are you guys big readers? Would you consider yourself readers?
Not a huge reader, I'll be honest.
Okay, so my parents actually opened an independent bookstore about a year ago over in East Tennessee, in like a vacation area called Gatlinburg. And so since then, and the inception of that too, like our family, I feel like, is constantly just passing books around and ordering books and talking about books. And so I really feel like I'm in the middle of it. I'll say I just read, so when I got home from my trip, there was I had of course a ton of mail because I was gone for 9 months, and in that mail I have no recollection of ordering this book, so I don't even know if it was meant for me or if I ordered it or if it came by accident because the label was faded on the box. But was Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F.
Oh yeah, I know that book. I haven't read it, but I know countless people who have read that book. Friends, family members, heard good things about it.
Yes, if you've been to an airport any time in the past 5 years, you've seen that book somewhere. Just with the cover so grabs you. So that's the most recent one I read. And so I was like, oh, interesting. I don't remember ordering this, and then opened it, and it's one of those books that you can really fly through and really grip me. And so, but one of my favorite books, I would say, is, and one that kind of went with me on my trip, was Travels with Charlie by John Steinbeck, where it's in 1960. He travels America in an RV, and I was reading that on my trip, and I thought, there's some things that are so different, of course, and there's so many things that are so similar. I was like, wow, that's the same thing as 2022 when you travel in an RV. So those are two that just kind of come to mind for sure.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. Did the passion for writing, like the passion for writing and reading, like did that come from your parents? Because you just mentioned your parents kind of opened an independent bookstore. Like, is that where that comes from, or was it kind of found later in life for you? Like, where is that passion kind of from?
Oh man, I've always enjoyed it. but it really wasn't until I would say later in life. I mean, I'm 32 now, but it wasn't even really through school much. I would say towards the end of college, I went to University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and I just had a blog with some friends that we would, just write various pieces on. I'm sure I'd be horrified if I read those now. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I just wrote an entire 2,000 words about an NBA 2K character I created, or something like that. And so I mean, I was doing it then and enjoying it then. I never enjoyed writing for school. That just was never fascinating for me, and nor was school kind of in general. But yeah, I would say really after that, and then I moved to Chicago after college and met some friends who were kind of in that field, and then suddenly I like knew other people who liked writing, and that just helped so much. I mean, same thing with golf, right? Like you meet someone else who plays if you're in a new area, and you're like, let's go play golf, So it kind of happened through then, and then I switched careers at some point, and during that time just got really into doing that, and then more or less stumbled my way into it. It wasn't like I was a little kid with a notebook walking around like jotting down everything. I wish I was. It would have been a lot easier had I've done that, but was not the case.
And you've also talked about the pain of being a writer and the trouble, like finding a publisher and the self-doubt, creating something that you're worried that, people might not like or care about. And your old boss even told you that you don't want to be a writer when you mentioned him that, that was your dream. So kind of talk about like, chasing your dreams and like all the things that kind of are wrapped into that.
Yeah, it's hard, certainly. I mean, there's so I'll refer back to the subtle art of not giving enough book. He talks about there's pain on any path you choose in life, right? So for you guys right now, you're starting the podcast network, right? And there's a lot of pains that go with that. I'm sure you would know way more than I would, right? Like, okay, I'll just try to make up something. Getting, scheduling guests, finding the time, doing all this stuff, doing the prep, doing all that stuff. But, is that pain that you want to go through? Yeah, I would guess you guys do, right? Because you want to do this network and get that started. And so kind of same thing with me is I always looked at like there's like these two costs that I could pay. Like the one cost was not pursue what I love, and it's easy. Like, all right, I've got this other career in Nashville that's thankfully financially lucrative, and has been for about a decade for me. And so I was like, that's really comfortable. I could just do that. But man, that going that route, like the cost of that route is my vitality. It's my life, right? Like and so that's where I'm like, man, I got to choose this path of being a writer, because that's what's in my head constantly. Like that's that voice you hear, right? That kind of inner voice. And that's what's on my heart. And I'm like, I got to follow that path. And that path, there's a lot of pain of sitting at a desk, staring at a blank page, coming up with something. I mean, I used to do stand-up comedy some in Nashville. And what I liked about that kind of writing is your feedback was instant if it was good or not. Right? I don't know if you guys are stand-up fans, but like you say a joke and it either works or doesn't, and within seconds when you're on stage.
I would be horrified to try stand-up comedy. Like, I don't think I'm a funny person. I think sometimes I can be, but like I would be absolutely terrified to get up on stage and do that.
Yeah, no.
Yes, it's horrifying. I mean, it took me so many times until I felt like I knew what I was doing up there. And even still, like if I went back and did it right now, I'd be basically starting over. I mean, I could tell you a million funny stories of, just times I bombed on stage doing that. But that with that writing, like the feedback is instant. And so that's kind of nice. With what I'm doing now, it's not instant. It's, I mean, it's definitely slower, but that's the path that I chose, and that's what I want to do. And doing interviews with you guys is awesome, and that's hopefully spreads your community. And what I found is the more I kind of publicly put that out there, the more you start to get help from places you don't expect it always, right? And so I try to make it a little less isolated, although I'm at my desk in the mornings and it's cold and I'm tired and I'd rather be sleeping. I'm like, no, this is the path I want to do.
Has that been the hardest part then? Like, is the hardest part for you getting yourself out there and getting the word out there, right? Because like that was one of the questions for me kind of further down the line for you was, I read that as well. And I was like, wow, the cost of staying, the cost of going, right? The cost of trying something new. It can be scary to try something new. It can be scary to take a leap of faith, to leave something that is comfortable, whether that be a job or a city or a relationship, like that is a scary thing to do for a lot of people. What do you find has been the biggest challenge, right? Is it getting it out there? Was it actually like putting the pen to paper, right? Like telling these stories? Or has it been kind of just taking that next step, really?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a good question. So I think for a long time in my life, and I'll get a little deeper than most golf podcasts here, I'm sure, which is great. Um, is just for I just kind of lived in dream world a lot in my life, where there was always things that I wanted to do, like, oh, I want to write a book, or oh, I want to do this trip, or oh, I've got an idea. People who are like ideas people, right? Or they'll call themselves ideas people. And I would have done that previously, like, oh, I'm an ideas guy, or whatever. I mean, that's kind of like a common phrase. But I just kind of hit a point where I was like, man, screw that. I cannot just be like, I've got to do the thing. I've got to make a choice to start doing stuff, and not be like, oh, there's this thing I want to do. Just because, I mean, there's this person I've, you know, look up to a lot, who talks about like the energy you spend talking about something is the energy you could spend doing it, right? And that eventually got to me. I was like, man, I'm spending so much time thinking about these things I want to do. It's time to just do them, even if it's if you start doing something and it's the crap version, just do the crap version of it first, and then you'll kind of figure out how things work. And um gosh, I mean, even I'll keep using you guys as an example. I know you come from like a media communications background, but you can just go buy a cheap microphone and plug it into your computer and start a podcast. Like you can do that, right? And then you kind of learn as you go. And obviously, you guys are so many steps above, ahead of that, which is great. But like, I'm in my head, I'm always like, man, just it's like your mood follows action, right? So you can't really talk your way into a new way of living. Like, you gotta do it. So like for me, it's like, all right, I'm getting up every morning and I'm not looking at my phone until, I don't know, after lunch sometime, or I'm not opening social media until after lunch. And I'm like, all right, I can say, oh, I want to do that, but if I actually do that, then my mood follows that. All right. So I hope that makes some bit of sense for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the hardest part for a lot of people is just starting, right? Is literally just being like, I am going to start this new venture, this new passion that I have. And that is like the hardest thing. And then, there's a lot of hard things that follow that as well. But I think that's just like the first big step to actually committing to doing something. And speaking of that, you obviously started Paired Up. And the idea for this came actually in Canada in 2018 when you were playing a round of golf with your father at Banff Springs. So before we get into that, which I want you to talk to me about that. Also, I'm someone who does not like playing with random people at the golf course. And Wade knows this because we show up and I'm like, Wade, I don't want to play with anyone. Let's just run to the first tee. Let's hit our tee shots and get this round started. So kind of a two-part question.
Go. Yeah.
Talk about how this all started on that day in Banff Springs, I guess the idea for this. And then also, like, what would you tell people like me, because there has to be more people out there who don't like playing with random people, like what is the biggest benefit to playing with other people that you don't know when you're playing around a golf?
Well, tell me this. What's the culture in Canada like around that? Do people expect to show up and play with people? I know it depends on like the level of course, right? If it's your local course that's maybe, uh, is cheaper than others. If it's a really expensive one, maybe people don't do that. What's the culture like up there?
It's changed a lot, right? So like COVID changed a lot up here for the golf industry. Our golf season's very short. It usually runs from April, and the hardcore golfers will usually play until November, right? But a lot of courses shut down in October. So you don't have a huge golf season. So already you're packing a lot of golf into a very short amount of time. But COVID, because everything really shut down, golf courses for a lot of COVID were allowed to stay open. So it just boomed. And you have these courses like Bruno and I, we used to go play courses for, $70 for a round on a Tuesday morning. And then all of a sudden it was 150 because now everybody wants to go play golf. So the expectations changed because, for a very long time, you could very much expect to show up and just play with who you've booked your round with, right? But now it's almost a guarantee you'll be paired up with someone else. And I think that some people love it. Like I've seen so many singles, and I've been paired up so many times with a single. And I'm like, why are you as a single at 4 p.m. on a Wednesday coming out here and pairing up with the rest of us, right? Like just go out by yourself and blitz through a round. But for some people, that is their social kind of element of their day, right? I'm the same as Bruno. Like if I see that I'm paired up, I'm like, man, all right, let's hurry this up. Or what we'll do is like, after hole 2, we'll just tell them that we want to play ahead or vice versa, right? So that's kind of the culture that we have up here. I don't know how different it is from down there, but it obviously can change depending on if you're playing a private or public course too.
Yeah, it sounds pretty similar though, for sure. I mean, and I used to be like you guys, to be totally clear. Like I was not always this person that's like, who's here? Who can I play with? Oh, fantastic. Like I was like you, where I'm sure you check in and you're like, oh, hey, there's someone else at our time. Hey, can we just go off now? Is that all right? Forget the range balls, forget this. Hey, quick, grab, let's go to the car. Come on, we gotta go, and doing that kind of thing. So one of the first, or the very first piece I ever wrote for Paired Up when I launched it was I hate getting paired up. And it was all the things I used to do to avoid random pairings. And like, it's obviously comical to look back at it now. So I definitely get that. I would say, so yeah, so really, and Bruno, you were asking like kind of how that started was, I have this affinity for Canada because that was really where Paired Up all started, because I was on a week-long trip to Banff, which, have you guys been there by chance?
I have not been known.
No, I need to go. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you've had a million friends who've been there and posted pictures
definitely.
of blue
all my
lakes
friends
and
have been
mountains
except me.
Yeah. We all know the one picture from Banff of that lake you always see, on social media. So gorgeous place. So so I played around with my dad there. We just got rental clubs, and it was not like a golf vacation. I was just there with my dad and mom and my sister. And so he and I snuck out to play, and that course is really epic, right? I'm sure, obviously, you know this. Like, as a famous designer, the mountains are just so in your face when you're there. Like, it looks like you could shank a shot off one of them. Like, they're so close, and so it's this really epic place. But after this round where we had crazy weather, it was like the windiest round I've played maybe ever for a few holes, and it rained a little. It was like all these crazy elements where, like, if I'm talking to you guys, I'm like, hey, let me tell you about Banff Springs. Oh man, there's this par 3 number 4 and this wind and this, I could go on that. But the most fascinating thing to me was this random pairing who I did not want, like you guys. Like, I did not want this pairing. It was this older couple from Canada or from Colorado named Herb and Jill, and they stole the show. Like, just the way they were with each other, just the things Herb said to me during the round. That's all I could think about after the round. And basically after that round, I was like, oh my gosh, I think that's what's most interesting to me about golf, is these people that you just meet. And I mean, how many activities can you do out there where you're just with a stranger for 4+ hours and you have to talk to them, right? Like, you can't ice them out for 4 hours unless you're a total sociopath. Like, you have to do that. And so that's what, when I explained this to non-golfers, like, I just did this workshop. I was like, look, golf is this activity that puts you with a stranger. I don't know anywhere else that does that. Maybe air travel, but you can totally put headphones in and be done, right, with the person next to you. You can talk to them if you want, but you don't have to. In golf, it's like you're at least going to be like, what do you do? Where do you live? How long you been playing? Oh, okay. Hey, do you like your driver? That kind of stuff. So from that day on, I was like, all right, I think I'm going to start this thing. Came up with the idea for Paired Up and started doing it just locally around Nashville. And I would go play my Muni and just meet these interesting people. And then that's essentially, fast forward a few years, that launched this trip that I just finished.
Yeah, it's amazing because you're probably the anomaly there now, right? Like, I think most people, and I don't know, like, this is my opinion, right? I think most people probably don't want to get paired up when they go to the golf course because they've booked their twosome or their threesome, and they're like, you know what? No, let's just go out and play with, the people that we've booked around with. But to kind of get yourself out there, right? Experience something new, talk to somebody who's totally different, who you're never going to run into in any other aspect of life and have to talk to, right? Like, I think that's kind of the amazing part of this and this whole journey with Paired Up, right, is that you've had this opportunity to meet some incredible people. So I want to talk to you about one of them right now quickly, because it really struck me when I was reading your stuff. You got to paired up with Tiger Woods' first Masters caddy. And
Yes.
I want to know, what is the craziest, like wildest story that he told you while you were on a golf course playing 18 rounds together, or 18 holes, sorry.
Yeah, that was a wild day because I was at the Augusta Muni, which they all call the patch, because I guess the old manager's wife had a cabbage patch on property. So every local there only knows it as a patch. It's technically like Augusta Municipal Golf Course. And like when you're in Augusta, Georgia, you're just Master Story is basically just hit you in the face, right? Like you can't go anywhere. Like you're at the grocery store, people wearing Masters hats. Like it's their local tournament essentially. For me and for you guys, like it's this, biggest tournament in the world, and it's a you dream of going there. Have you guys been there by chance?
Haven't. One day we're
Yes.
going.
So yeah, it's that kind of place. It's the one day kind of place, right? You're like, I got to go one day. So I went to a practice round, I don't know, 7 years ago. So that's really my only experience. So being back there, I figured, I was like, oh, maybe I'll meet some people that volunteer at the Masters or do whatever. And so I showed up at the Augusta Muni, didn't have a tee time. I just, which I know might be anxiety inducing to you guys, but, this was my 100-something course on this trip. So it was just so routine. And they were like, oh, well, there's this men's league coming out. So I don't know if you can get out if you want to go play by yourself before then. I was like, oh, no, I'll just wait. And I just knew, hey, I can ask this men's league. They're going to let me join them. And so one of the assistant pros was standing up front. He was just naming everybody that walked in. He's like, hey, here's so-and-so. He runs the league. Oh, here's this person. He works at the Masters every year, whatever. And then Tommy, this guy was walking up, and he's like, here's Tommy. Oh, hey, he was Tiger's caddy at his first Masters. And I was like, come again? What? Say that one more time. And so, yeah, so then I ended up playing with Tommy and a guy named Jim Dent, who won, I think, 13 times on the Champions Tour, and it's from Augusta, and they grew up together, and the street leading into the course is named after Jim Dent now, which is pretty neat. And so I was trying not just bust into, hey, tell me everything you know about Tiger, right? Because I'm guessing we're all kind of a similar age, right? Like I'm 32, and Tiger was like our childhood, right? If you're into 100%. Golf, that was it, right? I'm sure maybe you guys had like the little Tiger head cover and everything on your drivers. Maybe still do, potentially. So, and no judgment either way. So I was just kind of picking his brain about his life. His life was more fascinating, honestly, than that time at the Masters, because he caddied for tons and tons of players at the Masters, and he did not want to caddy for Tiger, which I thought was so shocking. But he just didn't want to caddy for an amateur, which is hilarious in hindsight that it was Tiger Woods, and he's like, no thanks. So the story that sticks out to me the most was, he said it was on Friday, which he was calling cut day. And Tiger drove it into the pine straw on 13, the famous par 5 dog leg. And he was only giving Tiger layup numbers just to punch it out of there and then hit his third shot up onto the green. And Tiger's like, no, what is it to cover the creek? And he's like, no, here, just, here, it's just punch it out, whatever. And Tiger basically looks at him and is like, what is it to cover the creek? And he's like, oh, he finally tells him, I forget what, 230 or 220, something like that. And he's like, give me my 4-iron. And he said he just pures it out of the pine straw onto the green. They go on to make the cut, and he gets the low amateur. And then Tiger ended up being pretty good, I guess, after that.
Jeez, that is incredible. So talk to us a little bit about this epic trip that you were on. Like, you basically traveled across the entire country. Like, what would you say is the biggest challenge living out of a van with 2 people and 2 dogs?
How much time do we have? Let's see. Yes. So basically, I just got home, more or less, from going to all 50 states in a Sprinter van with my girlfriend and our 2 dogs, like you said. And of course we flew to Hawaii. There's always one person that's like, how'd you drive to Hawaii? I'm like, okay, sorry, went to 49 states and then flew to Hawaii, and so, man, biggest pain. So there's so many little things about that there's not like one massive pain when you're like, have you guys done RV travel before?
No.
All right, nor had I before this trip, really. I did it one time in my life. I was in middle school, so I was basically in charge of nothing. I was a passenger, more or less. So And we only did like a 2-day test run last fall before we did the trip. So that probably could have done a longer test run. So there's all these little things that you have to do. Like our sink water would, like when we run our sink, it dumps into a 5-gallon or basically a 5-gallon container that you have to dump out when it starts to get full, right? And man, after living in the van for 9 months, somehow it would still happen where I'd be like doing dishes and wash my hands and suddenly be like, no, and like look under there and it's just like flooding out of this thing.
Oh,
And I'm like, oh, I have to like take this container out and it's like this nasty, like sink water and then dump it. So it is nice being home and not worrying about if the sink's, running too much. That finding places to park and sleep at night, going to the bathroom, finding places to go there. And then one of the weird little things that's a pain is like when you're sleeping, you just want like a nice level spot where you park. Like sometimes I pull into a parking lot and I would never think about it if I was like going there in my car. But if the parking lot's all slanted and then you pull in there, so I'm always trying to find like, all right, what's the level ground? So still today, like now that I'm back home in my regular car, I'll pull into a parking lot and start looking for a flat spot. I'm like, what am I doing? My brain is broken right now.
That's hilarious. How many states did it take you to get through until you were like, okay, now I got the hang of this. Like I'm all good now.
Yeah, so it probably took a month,
Okay.
which would have taken us into Texas. So we went we left Nashville, we went south, so we went through Georgia, Florida, and then we started working west to, so that was Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and then into Texas. And we were in Texas for about a month, and so that was really when I felt like, okay, I think we have it under control now. Although the moment you would think that you'd mess up something, and then I'm 6'3" and I was in a Sprinter van, and I would hit my head so much at the beginning on everything around me, and then later I would do it less and less. But then when I would do it later in the trip, it would make me so mad.
And you brought Mia along with you. So Mia agrees to go on this trip with you, which is honestly crazy. Like that's just, you've only been together since 2020, right? So she agrees to come on this trip with you. Does she golf? Has she played golf with you along the trip? And also, how do you convince someone to do this with you?
Yes, that's fair question. So she does not play, but she has a great swing. I always tell her like when she'll go to the range on occasion with me, and I'm like, people would envy your swing. That's great. So her dad had her take lessons as a kid, so I think it's like still in her blood a little bit, but she does not play. And so she's a competitive runner, so she does like marathons and that kind of thing. And so we're headed to London in April for the London Marathon. So she stays plenty busy. That's her thing. Golf's my thing, which is fine. And so so really the nice thing was that she could work remotely. And when we met, I thought I was going to do this trip in 2020, and obviously COVID hit, and they scrapped that pretty quickly. So I still really wanted to do this trip even when we met. So like the good thing is that I didn't meet her and then say like, then I didn't come up with the idea. That I was like, hey, it was almost like I had this idea when I met her, like, hi, I'm Jeremy, and here's this thing that I have to do with my life at some point. So maybe it's easier when it's introduced that way than being like, hey, what do you want to eat for dinner? And oh, do you want to go on a 50-state road trip at some point next year? So the sales pitch was not too hard because she just was able to work remotely and train for running, and all that worked out just fine.
It seems like you got to keep her there if she came on this journey with you, man. So
that's a true test, I suppose, right?
Talk about Walmart. They played a big role in the success of this journey. So can you explain why?
Yes, and this is not a paid ad, of course. But they sponsored the trip in more ways than they know. But yeah, so in America, you can, for almost every Walmart, you can park and sleep overnight, and so those kind of became our safe havens, our like safety beacons of, hey, we can always park at Walmart. Like early in the trip, we kind of look for cool spots. Like when we're on the coast, we're like, oh man, I wonder if there's a cool little turnoff somewhere where we can park. So we would do that, in various places. But when you're in middle America and it's late and it's dark and you got to find somewhere to sleep, like Walmart was just the go-to for that. And so I could probably walk into a Walmart blindfolded and tell you where everything is now because we went to so many of them. And we basically walk in every night right before they close, go to the bathroom, come back out. You know, I got so used to walking into Walmart and leaving without buying anything. And then, but of course it sucks you in. Like once you're at Walmart, you're like, oh, well, you know, we could use this, or, oh, we do need to buy this. So you end up buying a bunch of stuff too, which is probably why they let you sleep there. But yeah, so they were kind of our home for 9 months, more or less.
That's crazy, man. That's just bouncing parking lot to parking lot, really. And like,
Yes.
you've seen all the states, you've seen all 50, and you've traveled all of them. You've played golf in all of them. Like, do you have a state that you would say, I want to go back to first, right? If you had to go back to one state that's not your home, so not Tennessee, one state that you would have to travel back to. So, you know, where are you going? And also, if you had to go play golf in a state, what state are you going to play golf first?
Ooh, man. So many come to mind. I mean, I really love California, but I'm gonna take that off the table because that kind of seems like an obvious one because there's so much epic golf out there everyone knows about. And I was just there the past few days and was like in Southern California and thought like, oh man, I think I want to live here. And so I'll take that off the table and try to think of a different one. One of them that stood out to me was Arizona, actually. Obviously, you know, a golf mecca in the wintertime for sure. I don't know if people from Toronto go there and play
Oh yeah,
in the winter,
lots.
but yeah, I had a feeling. And so I caught it right before it was like crazy hot in the summer. It was only like 80, which was nice. And then the day we left, it was 105. So
Oof.
I was like, we just missed it. And so I would like to go back there again. Although we saw almost the entire state because we went from Tucson to Phoenix. I played in both of those places. Then we went to Sedona, if you guys are familiar with that. Just like gorgeous red rocks. It's kind of like this legendary place for like spiritual healing and like all this jazz. They don't have a court. They didn't have a muni, so I didn't play there. But I did get an energy reading done for the first time, which I'll write about in the book, of course. But which is an experience. And so and then of course you get up to the Grand Canyon. That's so cool. So I might do Arizona, although I really, really love the Northeast. And I hit the Northeast in the fall, like places like Maine and Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire. Those are places I would like to go back to because I was kind of racing the weather. So we were going a little fast through there. So I would not mind going back and playing some golf, especially Massachusetts, because they're pretty loaded with golf for sure.
Fair enough. What is an energy reading? And what's your energy? And like, is it just an energy reading for that time, or is it an energy reading overall?
So I feel not super qualified to answer those, but I'm gonna give my best at that. I guess I can't just mention energy reading and then gloss over it. But
no.
Really, so I went in there. I was really frustrated with a few things, and went in there, and it's it's your classic like it smells really nice. It looks like a massage studio essentially. And so you go in there, and then they're like, hey, this person, I forget what they call this person, is going to come get you. So then I went back into this room, and she just wanted to talk out a few things like, hey, what's going on today? And I didn't really give her specifics, really. I was like, hey, I'm just really frustrated with a couple things, blah, blah, blah. And so then I just laid down on this massage table, and and of course there's like nice music playing, and the mood is set really well. Of course, you're in the red rocks of Sedona, and it's all about your chakra, if you're familiar with that. And so she would I mean, I don't know, my eyes are closed really, but she would kind of walk around me and do different things, and like kind of like put her hand like on different like areas of I guess where you feel different chakras or something like that. And if someone really knows what they're talking about and they're listening to this, then they're probably horrified at the way I'm explaining it.
I feel like I've seen this on The Bachelor. Like,
yes, probably
numerous times.
Yeah, yes. And so and then after, this was the craziest thing, is afterwards. So I think I was maybe laying down for like 10 to 15 minutes, and you can do it much longer, of course. But I was like, hey, I'm in Sedona, I want to do something kind of weird. And afterwards, she sat down and she was like, hey, so this is what I was feeling, and just nailed everything that I was feeling, like stuff that I had not talked to her about. And just like, she's like, hey, so I'm feeling some tension here because of blah, 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 blah. So it wasn't like a psychic reading, but it really felt like one. And
wow.
It honestly made me feel way better, way more calm and relaxed. And I was like, damn, I think this might work.
Jeez, we got to go for an energy reading,
right? I need an energy reading right now.
Sold us right there.
I was about to say, yeah, Google Toronto energy readings and see what happens.
So Jeremy, you have played golf with a lot of people. After these 269 random pairings, I know this might be tough, but which one do you remember the most vividly?
Oh man. Well, I mean, there's quite a few I keep up with still. That kind of became friends as I was going, and we just have such a good connection. There's a guy in Los Angeles that has become kind of a close confidant of mine, and he's this has a fascinating story. I'll write about it in the book. But his dad escaped escaped uh, Siberia, and like being sent off to Siberia by Stalin, and was
Wow.
escaped and was able to move his family to America and moved to Kansas. And then this guy went to a modeling audition and was seen by a talent scout who plucked him up, and he became like a really big time model for a bit, and then just lived this really crazy life. But he's also a writer, and again, this is purely random pairing. He definitely stands out in my mind. His name is Gene, and I mean, we still text just about weekly, and I shoot him different things I'm writing and working on, and yes, he was one that I can't wait to tell his story in the book for sure.
Yeah, it's one of a handful, right? Like I've read, and everyone who hasn't, like everyone should go and read some of what Jeremy's written because it's incredible.
Thanks.
Some of the other stories that really get me are the ones of people who go and maintain their own courses after hours, right? Like these are people with full-time jobs who go and play golf because they enjoy it, but then also spend hours of their own time, fixing divots, picking weeds, like going out to these courses and making sure that they are able to be enjoyed by themselves, obviously, but everyone else. Like, talk a little bit about those people and kind of how many of those you came across, right? Like, is there a surprising number of those people that you met?
Yeah, quite a few, and I've never really done that. I don't know. Have you guys ever done that? Have you gone to like volunteered at a like your local golf course? Because
No.
I have not.
I used
just
to
be
caddy, but I would get paid to caddy.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
That's called a job, Bruno. That's a job.
Yeah, exactly. I was like 15, 16 years old. But anyway, yeah, no, I've never
Yes.
volunteered at a golf course.
Yeah, so I would meet these people on occasion who I would see them off to the side, like you're saying, pulling weeds or with a weed eater. Or I remember this guy in New Hampshire. It was literally pitch black. We didn't finish 18 holes. Like when you're chasing daylight, and he was up ahead, and I'm like, hey, who's that? And I saw him pushing like a fertilizer spreader across the screen. You could just hear like this clicking noise up ahead, and they're like, oh, that's this guy who owns like this local grass seed business. He just comes out here and spreads his extra product. And it was a Saturday night, and this guy has a family and a full-time job, and he's just out there doing that. And then I meet people who, when their course is closed, that they were like, okay, well, hey, this is still my course. I'm not going to go just play somewhere else and never come back here. Like they just would be like, all right, how can I help it reopen? And they would go out there and just find different jobs. I mean, I guess all these municipal courses, I mean, lack of funds is such a main thing because all their funding is through, the tee times, whatever, but it's a city run course, right? And so they're not swimming in cash, certainly, except for a few of them. And so, yeah, so I kept running across these people who I just kind of was in my head calling the damn givers. Like they just give a damn about their course, and no one's telling them to go do this. No one's asking them to go do this. And they just want to see their place succeed. And it's really inspiring when you're around those people because you're like, man, maybe I don't need to sit there and scroll on TikTok for half an hour, and I can go do some good in my community. Like,
Yeah.
my hands up. I'm guilty, right? Like I have not done this, but I kept saying this, and those are the people that are just so inspiring to be around for sure.
Oh, that's awesome, man. It's very inspirational to see how many people actually take time out of their day to do things like that. And obviously, like we said, they don't get paid for it. They're just volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of getting close to the end here, Jeremy, but I just want to ask you about the book you're working on because you just came back from the West Coast and you're working on this book now. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's really going to be, yeah, I think I'm going to call it Paired Up at the Muni, at least for now. And it's going to be about this 50-state road trip. And, it's the structure is kind of easy to follow because when you get all 50 states, it's like, all right, well, I've read about 30 of these states so far. That means there's 20 left, so like, it's going to be about that. My focus is always mainly on the people, right, as I'm traveling. But of course, I ran across some crazy stories about little quirky towns Like I can tell you guys a story about this quirky town in New Mexico if you'd like to hear that. Or
Yeah,
just
sure, please. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So I went to this town. I played this municipal course, and this is actually where I met one of those dam givers. Speaking of, this guy that would go out and weed eat for hours in like the 100-degree weather. It's a town called, and let me know if you've heard of this. This is the real town name, Truth or Consequences, New Mexico.
Come on.
Have you heard of this?
No.
So I kept seeing this on the map, and I was like, something's wrong with my phone because it's showing me Truth or Consequences. And is that a business that's showing up? What's happening here? And because I was trying to play a muni in southern New Mexico on my way to Arizona, and I was trying to play around Las Cruces, but there was not a municipal there. And so I like an hour or so north was that town. It said it had a municipal, and I was like, what is going on here? So I look it up, and years ago, Truth or Consequences was a huge game show, like in like the 50s or so in America. And so this host was Ralph Edwards, this really famous kind of game show host personality type back then. And it was the show's 10th anniversary special. And they said, hey, whatever town in America wants to rename themselves after our show, we'll come do our 10th anniversary special there. So this town in New Mexico was previously called Hot Springs, New Mexico, because there's tons of hot springs, as you might imagine. And they were like, we'll do it. And they kind of did it as a joke. And then so he came, did the show there, and this town fell in love with this guy. And so then the town was going to switch his name back, but then they voted within the city. They're like, what are we doing? Are we Hot Springs? Or are we Truth or Consequences? And Truth or Consequences won the vote. So every May, I think it's the first week of May every year. And this is the time we happen to be there. And this is just one of those crazy things that happens when you travel that you stumble upon and you're like, how did this happen? This is so amazing. Is they call it like their annual fiesta. It's a week long of all these different parties and things with a parade and all sorts of stuff. But this guy Ralph Edwards would come back every year because he loved the town so much, and he'd bring celebrities. I mean, like, you know, Marilyn Monroe's been there, and like all these people from back in the day would go to this week long fiesta. And then Bob Barker, you know, who we all know from getting in fist fights with Happy Gilmore, you know, like he was the host of that show. Then he came there a bunch. So there's certain things in town. I think there's like a Bob Barker animal shelter there that he paid for, and so we happened to go on that show's Fiesta Week, or that town's Fiesta Week, and I played this little 9-hole muni that was just beyond scruffy, but I had a blast. And then we went to the parade and just had quite the time in Truth or Consequences. New Mexico.
That's an incredible story, and I need to go to this town now. Like everyone needs to go to this town because
yes,
that's amazing. I can't let you go, Jeremy, though, before asking you one last thing, because one of the articles that you wrote, it's called I Forgot, right? And you wrote this in 2019, and it really resonated with me because anyone who's played golf with me over the last, I'd say 2 and a bit years, I love this game. I think it's the best game on earth, but I don't like playing this game anymore. It frustrates me beyond belief. I used to be really good. I don't play a lot anymore, so naturally I'm not as good anymore. And going out there and being incredibly frustrated on the golf course, your article about playing the cup with your friends and being incredibly frustrated on the golf course, I was like, that's me. I also play an annual event with my buddies down in Niagara Falls every year, and I am usually more frustrated than not when I go down and play. How has this trip, but also kind of, you know, becoming a writer and taking this journey, how has that changed your perspective on golf, but also on your life?
Yeah. So, man, I would imagine a lot of people listening can resonate with what you're saying about getting so aggravated with this game. I mean, it's hard. Like when if I talk to someone who does not play golf and I tell them, like, you know, that's like one of my main things, and I'm like, oh, I'm not going to try to talk you into playing it. Like, it's really frustrating, right? Like I get that for sure. And so that piece you bring up, I guess I wrote that because I just got so focused on my score when I was playing with my buddies, that I just really forgot what's enjoyable about this game. And it kind of, that, like you're saying, that dives in the whole paired up thing, because I mean, there's people who play competitive golf for a living, right? Of course, or they love competitive golf, and boy, do you only care about the score when you do that, right? And so I caddy for a friend of mine, which I did on this trip. I took a week break when I was in Austin and caddied for a buddy in like the PGA Club Professional Championship, where the top 20 make it into the actual PGA like major. And I need like a detox after that week every time I caddy for him, because it's so score, swing focused, all this stuff. And I love my buddy and we have a great time doing that. I love caddying for him. But I'm just like, man, that's not what I love about this game. And like what this game offers you to do is, and I challenge you guys to do this next time you're out, is like this game can put you with a stranger in typically a really cool space. It's like a big park, right? Or it's like a huge city park, or maybe it's in Banff, and this epic, mountain range all around you, and you're with a stranger that you would have never met otherwise, most likely, and you get to learn their life story. And the thing about when you learn someone's life story when you do this is, or a couple things. One, the golf, your swing becomes completely secondary, right? Your score, like a lot of people ask me like, hey, what's your handicap or what? Like when I finish this trip, and I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll tell you, but like my scores had nothing to do with it. Or like, oh man, how many birdies did you make? How many? I'm like, I don't know. Like,
yeah.
Yes, I keep score. Like I'm not this Zen person out there like score is a construct. Like I keep score when I play golf and I want to do well, but that's not the main thing for me. And what that allows me to do is when you get lost in someone else's story is you see them in a whole new way. So think about the person that you might be paired up with at your local course that you're trying to avoid. And it's really easy to judge a book by its cover in golf, right? How are they dressed? What kind of clubs do they have? What's their bag look like? Is there a ball retriever in their bag? There's a lot of things. Are there iron covers? There's a lot of things that people see in golf that you can judge a book by its cover, right? And after this trip and playing with 269 people and seeing every which way a person can present themselves as a book cover, and then taking the time to learn their story, you see them in a whole new way, and it changes you too in a major way. Like suddenly it's no longer, hey, I played golf with this woman who had iron covers and it fished out 25 golf balls from the lake as we played. Like that story then changes to, hey, I played with this woman who, yeah, her husband passed back when she, maybe 10 years ago, and since then she discovered that she found this poet that she loves, and now she goes to these poetry conferences every year in Ireland. Like suddenly it's like, whoa, you get this whole new story it's really just, it's one level down. It's one level down from where you were beforehand, right? Than the iron covers and that kind of thing. So that's what golf provides and gives everyone the opportunity to do. And I don't want to sound like I'm too preachy and saying like, and if you're not doing that, you're doing it wrong. There's a lot of different ways to enjoy golf. That's just what I find most enjoyable, especially after doing this trip, is meeting people, learning their stories, having their stories change me. And now with this book, telling people these stories to then maybe open your eyes up too somewhat.
Nice. That's amazing, man. And really great perspective on it. Something that I think that would definitely Bruno and I, next time we go out, we'll try, and everyone else should definitely try as well. Thank you so much for your time, Jeremy. Really, honestly, appreciate it. It's been amazing talking to you. We could talk to you all day, but we'll leave it there. Look out for Jeremy's book because it's coming soon. We believe it. It's dropping, and we will be super excited to read it when it does.
Thank you, guys. And yes, next time you play golf, go out as a single and ask to be paired up and just see what happens. Okay. I know golf season is kind of far away, but just try that out. And look, here's your first question to the person is, hey, build me the best burger, fries, and dessert you can build.
There you go.
There it is.
I love it.
And then go from there, see what happens.
Awesome,
But yeah,
Jeremy.
thanks, fellas.
Yeah, thanks so much, man.
Thanks
Great
a
having
lot,
you on.
Jeremy. Appreciate
All the
it,
best.
man.
Take care.